Your soulmate is crying with happiness right now. Because you finally did this. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because sometimes the greatest changes in life don't arrive with applause, fireworks, or dramatic announcements. Sometimes they happen so quietly that almost no one notices them at first. A gentle change in attitude. A kinder response. A little more patience than yesterday. A little less fear than before. One small decision repeated again and again until it quietly transforms an entire life. And listen to this. Your soulmate never expected an ordinary day to become one they would remember forever. The morning began like countless others. Soft sunlight filtered through the curtains. Birds welcomed the new day with cheerful songs. The breeze carried the scent of fresh rain through the open window. People hurried toward work. Children laughed on their way to school. Neighbors greeted one another with warm smiles. Everything looked wonderfully ordinary. Yet inside their heart, something felt different. Not because they had received exciting news. Not because someone had made a dramatic announcement. But because they quietly noticed something that had been changing for a long time. Because your heart needs this right now, because real transformation often happens gradually, one small choice at a time. Your soulmate couldn't ignore what they were beginning to see. And listen to this. For weeks, perhaps even months, they had noticed tiny changes. At first they seemed almost invisible. Moments that anyone else might have overlooked. You seemed a little more patient during difficult conversations. A little slower to become frustrated. A little quicker to encourage someone. A little more willing to listen before speaking. None of these moments seemed extraordinary on their own. Yet together they painted a beautiful picture. The picture of someone growing. Someone learning. Someone becoming stronger in quiet ways. Because your heart needs this right now, because the most meaningful growth is often measured by who we are becoming, not simply by what we accomplish. Your soulmate quietly smiled. And listen to this. They remembered a time when they believed people rarely changed. They thought habits lasted forever. That kindness belonged only to naturally gentle people. That patience belonged only to those born with calm personalities. But watching this quiet transformation challenged those beliefs. They realized something beautiful. Growth is possible for anyone willing to learn. Character is built one decision at a time. Every act of honesty strengthens integrity. Every act of forgiveness strengthens compassion. Every act of patience strengthens love. Because your heart needs this right now, because every day gives us another opportunity to become a little more like the person we hope to be. Your soulmate carried that thought throughout the morning. And listen to this. Later that day, they visited a peaceful park they often returned to whenever they wanted to think clearly. The trees swayed gently in the breeze. Children played happily across the grass. An elderly couple slowly walked together, stopping now and then simply to admire the flowers. Nearby, a young parent patiently helped a child build a small sandcastle. The castle wasn't perfect. It collapsed several times. Each time they simply smiled and built it again. Watching that simple scene reminded your soulmate of something unexpected. Strong relationships are built much like that sandcastle. Not perfectly. Not instantly. But patiently. Carefully. One handful at a time. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting relationships grow through perseverance rather than perfection. Your soulmate quietly treasured that lesson. And listen to this. As they continued walking, they remembered conversations from the past. Moments when misunderstandings had seemed overwhelming. Days when silence had lasted longer than it should have. Times when pride almost became stronger than understanding. Looking back, they realized that every challenge had offered an opportunity. An opportunity to become more patient. More understanding. More compassionate. More willing to see another person's perspective. Those difficult moments had not been wasted. They had quietly shaped the person they were becoming. Because your heart needs this right now, because even life's hardest seasons can produce wisdom when we allow them to teach us. Your soulmate reflected deeply. And listen to this. The afternoon sunlight grew warmer as they found a familiar wooden bench beneath a large oak tree. They sat quietly. No phone. No distractions. Only the gentle sounds of nature. For several peaceful minutes they simply watched people passing by. A teenager helped an elderly man carry groceries. A stranger held the door open for another person. Friends laughed together over simple jokes. None of these people knew they were being observed. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They were simply choosing kindness. That realization touched your soulmate's heart. True character appears most clearly when nobody is expecting applause. Because your heart needs this right now, because integrity is revealed through the choices we make when no one else is watching. Your soulmate quietly smiled. And listen to this. As the afternoon continued, another realization gently settled into their heart. The thing that filled them with happiness wasn't success. It wasn't wealth. It wasn't recognition. It was seeing growth. Watching someone become more thoughtful. More humble. More grateful. More willing to admit mistakes. More eager to encourage others. Those quiet changes carried incredible beauty. Because your heart needs this right now, because becoming a better person is one of life's greatest achievements. Your soulmate felt unexpectedly emotional. And listen to this. They remembered something an older mentor had once shared many years earlier. The happiest relationships are not between perfect people. They are between people who never stop growing. At the time, those words seemed ordinary. Now they felt deeply meaningful. Your soulmate realized that growth is one of the greatest gifts anyone can offer a relationship. Not because anyone expects perfection, but because a willing heart creates hope. Because your heart needs this right now, because relationships flourish when both people remain willing to learn, apologize, forgive, and keep growing together. Your soulmate quietly embraced that truth. And listen to this. As evening approached, the sunset painted the sky with brilliant shades of gold, orange, and soft pink. The entire park seemed to glow beneath the fading light. Watching the sunset reminded them that every day offers another beginning. Yesterday's mistakes do not have to define tomorrow. Every sunrise brings another opportunity. Another chance to speak kindly. Another chance to forgive. Another chance to encourage. Another chance to choose love instead of fear. That realization filled their heart with gratitude. Because your heart needs this right now, because hope grows strongest when we believe that positive change is always possible. Your soulmate smiled through quiet tears. Not tears of sadness. Not tears of regret. But tears of gratitude. Gratitude for growth. Gratitude for second chances. Gratitude for seeing quiet transformation unfold in ordinary life. And listen to this. Returning home that evening, they reached for an old notebook resting on a shelf. Instead of writing about accomplishments, they wrote about character. Today I was reminded that kindness changes people. Patience creates peace. Humility opens hearts. Forgiveness heals relationships. Growth is more beautiful than perfection. Each sentence brought unexpected comfort. Because they realized they no longer measured success by outward achievements alone. They measured it by the condition of the heart. Because your heart needs this right now, because our greatest victories are often the invisible ones taking place within us. Your soulmate quietly closed the notebook. And listen to this. Before turning off the light, they stood beside the window watching the stars slowly appear across the night sky. The room became wonderfully still. The tears that had filled their eyes earlier finally made sense. They weren't crying because of one dramatic event. They weren't crying because everything had suddenly become perfect. They were moved by something much quieter. The joy of witnessing genuine personal growth. The hope that comes from seeing kindness become stronger than pride. The peace that comes from watching compassion replace fear. Those quiet victories touched their heart more deeply than words could explain. Before going to sleep, they wrote one final sentence across the bottom of the notebook page. The greatest reason for hope isn't that life suddenly becomes perfect. It's watching someone choose honesty, kindness, humility, patience, and gratitude again and again until those choices quietly become who they are. They gently closed the notebook. A peaceful smile remained on their face. Tomorrow would still bring challenges. There would still be misunderstandings to work through. New lessons to learn. New opportunities to grow. But they no longer feared the future. Because they had discovered something timeless. Real happiness isn't found in dramatic moments alone. It grows through ordinary days where people continue choosing compassion, integrity, forgiveness, and love. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after noticing those quiet changes, your soulmate couldn't stop thinking about them. It wasn't one dramatic event that touched their heart. It wasn't one unforgettable conversation. It wasn't a miracle that suddenly transformed everything overnight. Instead, it was something far more powerful. They realized that genuine growth is often almost invisible while it's happening. Like a seed quietly becoming a tree. Like the sunrise slowly replacing the darkness. Like trust growing through hundreds of ordinary moments until one day you suddenly realize everything feels different. And listen to this. The following morning arrived wrapped in gentle silence. Soft sunlight spilled across the floor. The cool breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers through the open window. Birds greeted the new day with cheerful songs. Outside, people continued their familiar routines. Cars passed. Children laughed. Neighbors exchanged friendly greetings. Everything seemed exactly the same. Yet inside your soulmate's heart, nothing felt the same anymore. They realized they were no longer focusing on what was missing. Instead, they were noticing everything that had quietly improved. Because your heart needs this right now, because gratitude often begins when we choose to notice quiet progress instead of chasing perfect results. Your soulmate smiled softly. And listen to this. While preparing breakfast, they remembered conversations from the past. Times when misunderstandings had lasted longer than necessary. Moments when pride made it difficult to apologize. Days when fear made honest communication seem impossible. Those memories once brought sadness. Now they brought perspective. Because they could clearly see how much had changed. Growth hadn't erased the past. It had transformed the future. Every difficult lesson had become wisdom. Every mistake had become an opportunity to mature. Every challenge had quietly strengthened character. Because your heart needs this right now, because our greatest lessons often grow from the seasons we once wished had never happened. Your soulmate quietly reflected. And listen to this. Later that morning they decided to visit the same peaceful walking trail that had become their favorite place for reflection. The tall trees swayed gently in the breeze. Sunlight danced across the path. Birds moved from branch to branch without hurry. The world felt wonderfully calm. As they walked, they noticed a gardener carefully watering young plants. Each flower received the same patient attention. No rushing. No frustration. Just quiet consistency. Watching that simple act reminded your soulmate of something beautiful. Healthy relationships grow exactly the same way. Not through one grand gesture, but through consistent care. One encouraging word. One thoughtful apology. One patient conversation. One act of kindness after another. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest relationships are cultivated through daily care rather than occasional excitement. Your soulmate treasured that thought. And listen to this. Further along the path, they saw a little girl learning to paint beside her grandmother. The picture wasn't perfect. Some colors stretched outside the lines. The shapes weren't always even. Yet every time the child looked discouraged, her grandmother smiled and quietly said, "You're getting better with every brushstroke." Those simple words stayed with your soulmate. Growth doesn't require perfection. It requires encouragement. It requires patience. It requires someone willing to celebrate progress instead of demanding perfection. Because your heart needs this right now, because people flourish when they are encouraged to grow rather than pressured to be flawless. Your soulmate carried that lesson with them. And listen to this. As the afternoon arrived, they found themselves sitting beside a peaceful lake. The surface of the water reflected the bright blue sky. Occasionally a gentle breeze created small ripples. Then everything became still again. Watching the water reminded them of the human heart. Life will always bring moments of uncertainty. Misunderstandings. Unexpected disappointments. Questions without immediate answers. But peace returns when we refuse to let temporary storms define the entire journey. Because your heart needs this right now, because calm hearts make wiser decisions than fearful ones. Your soulmate breathed deeply. And listen to this. They opened the notebook that had become their faithful companion through these days of reflection. Instead of writing about yesterday, they began writing about tomorrow. Tomorrow I want to encourage someone. Tomorrow I want to listen more carefully. Tomorrow I want to express appreciation instead of assuming people already know. Tomorrow I want to choose patience before frustration. Tomorrow I want kindness to become even more natural than today. Reading those words filled them with hope. Not because tomorrow promised perfection, but because tomorrow offered another opportunity to grow. Because your heart needs this right now, because every sunrise offers another chance to become the person you hope to be. Your soulmate quietly smiled. And listen to this. As afternoon slowly became evening, they remembered advice from someone they deeply respected. The happiest people are not those who never struggle. They are the ones who continue choosing hope while they grow. Those words suddenly made perfect sense. Happiness wasn't arriving because life had become easier. It was growing because perspective had changed. Instead of measuring life by problems, they began measuring it by progress. Instead of asking, "Why isn't everything perfect?" they quietly asked, "How have I grown since yesterday?" That single question transformed the way they viewed every challenge. Because your heart needs this right now, because progress brings lasting joy when we stop comparing ourselves with perfection. Your soulmate quietly accepted that truth. And listen to this. As sunset painted the sky with beautiful shades of gold, orange, and violet, they sat quietly beneath their favorite old oak tree. Children laughed nearby. A family enjoyed a picnic. Friends shared stories. The world continued moving peacefully. Looking around, they realized something profound. Every meaningful relationship they admired had one thing in common. Nobody expected perfection. They simply refused to stop caring. They kept showing up. They kept forgiving. They kept learning. They kept encouraging one another through every season. Because your heart needs this right now, because commitment is revealed through consistency more than emotion. Your soulmate felt tears filling their eyes once again. Not tears of sadness. Not tears of regret. But tears of overwhelming gratitude. Gratitude for every lesson. Every second chance. Every opportunity to become kinder than before. Every quiet reminder that people really can change when they remain willing to grow. And listen to this. Returning home that evening, they prepared a warm cup of tea and sat beside the window as darkness slowly settled outside. The stars gradually filled the sky. The room became wonderfully peaceful. Opening the notebook one final time for the day, they carefully wrote. Today reminded me that the greatest victories are often invisible. Patience becoming stronger than frustration. Humility replacing pride. Forgiveness replacing resentment. Hope replacing fear. Kindness becoming a habit instead of an effort. Each sentence reflected a quiet transformation. Not only in another person, but within their own heart. Because your heart needs this right now, because witnessing growth often inspires us to continue growing ourselves. Your soulmate smiled through grateful tears. And listen to this. Before turning off the light, they stood beside the window and whispered one final promise to themselves. I will celebrate progress instead of demanding perfection. I will encourage growth wherever I see it. I will choose compassion when people are still learning. I will remember that every kind decision plants a seed for tomorrow. And I will never underestimate the power of one small act of love repeated faithfully every day. Those promises brought a peace they hadn't felt in a very long time. The room grew still. Tomorrow remained unknown. Life would continue bringing new lessons, new opportunities, new challenges. Yet hope had become stronger than uncertainty. Because they had learned something they would never forget. Real happiness doesn't come from one dramatic breakthrough. It grows quietly through ordinary people choosing honesty, patience, humility, forgiveness, gratitude, and love one day at a time. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after days of quiet reflection, after watching small acts of kindness slowly replace old habits, after realizing that genuine growth often happens without anyone noticing, your soulmate reached a moment they would never forget. Not because a miracle suddenly happened. Not because every problem disappeared overnight. Not because life became perfect. But because they finally understood that the greatest victories in life are often invisible. The victory of becoming more patient. The victory of choosing forgiveness. The victory of speaking with kindness when anger would have been easier. The victory of becoming someone whose presence brings peace instead of fear. And listen to this. The morning arrived wrapped in gentle stillness. Golden sunlight slowly spread across the room. The breeze carried the fresh scent of flowers through the open window. Birds welcomed another ordinary day with cheerful songs. Everything outside seemed exactly as it always had. Yet inside, everything felt wonderfully different. Instead of worrying about what still needed to change, your soulmate found themselves celebrating how much quiet progress had already taken place. That realization brought unexpected joy. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting change is often easier to see when we compare ourselves with who we were yesterday instead of who we wish we already were. Your soulmate smiled quietly. And listen to this. As they prepared breakfast, they remembered seasons when hope had felt distant. Times when misunderstandings seemed impossible to overcome. Days when discouragement whispered that people never truly changed. Looking back now, those fears no longer felt as convincing. Not because life had removed every challenge, but because experience had taught them something stronger than fear. Growth is possible. Healing is possible. Second chances are possible. One kind decision at a time. Because your heart needs this right now, because hope becomes stronger every time we choose progress instead of giving up. Your soulmate carried that thought throughout the morning. And listen to this. Later that day, they returned to the familiar park that had become a place of quiet reflection. The old oak tree stood exactly where it always had. Children laughed nearby. Families enjoyed simple conversations. An elderly man patiently fed birds beside a peaceful pond. Nothing dramatic happened. Yet everything seemed meaningful. Watching those ordinary moments reminded your soulmate that the happiest people weren't waiting for perfect lives. They were fully present inside ordinary ones. Because your heart needs this right now, because gratitude transforms ordinary moments into lasting memories. Your soulmate quietly treasured that lesson. And listen to this. As they continued walking, they noticed a young boy helping his younger sister tie her shoes. He wasn't asked. No one applauded. He simply noticed she needed help. That tiny act of kindness stayed in your soulmate's heart. It reminded them that love often speaks most clearly through ordinary actions. Not dramatic speeches. Not expensive gifts. Just quiet compassion offered without expecting recognition. Because your heart needs this right now, because genuine kindness leaves a lasting impact even when almost nobody notices it. Your soulmate smiled softly. And listen to this. The afternoon sun warmed the walking path as they found a familiar wooden bench beneath the shade of the large oak tree. Sitting quietly, they reached once more for the notebook that had accompanied them throughout this season. This time they didn't write questions. They didn't write worries. Instead, they wrote reminders. Growth deserves celebration. Kindness deserves repetition. Forgiveness deserves another chance. Gratitude deserves expression. Hope deserves protection. Reading those simple words filled their heart with peace. Not because every answer had arrived, but because they had finally discovered the direction they wanted their life to follow. Because your heart needs this right now, because clarity comes when our daily choices begin matching our deepest values. Your soulmate quietly reflected. And listen to this. As the afternoon slowly became evening, they remembered advice from someone who had quietly influenced their life many years before. Never underestimate the power of becoming 1% kinder each day. At first, that advice had sounded almost too simple. Now it felt profound. 1% more patient. 1% more understanding. 1% more generous. 1% quicker to forgive. 1% slower to judge. Those tiny improvements, repeated consistently, eventually reshape an entire life. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting transformation is usually built through small faithful choices rather than dramatic moments. Your soulmate embraced that truth. And listen to this. The golden sunset slowly painted the sky with warm shades of orange, pink, and violet. Looking across the peaceful lake, they noticed gentle ripples moving across the water. After a few moments, the surface became still again. Watching that simple scene reminded them of the human heart. Life will always bring difficult moments. Disagreements. Disappointments. Unexpected changes. But peace returns when we choose understanding instead of resentment. Patience instead of panic. Compassion instead of criticism. Because your heart needs this right now, because inner peace grows when we respond to life's challenges with wisdom instead of fear. Your soulmate quietly breathed deeply. And listened to this. As evening arrived, they returned home and lit a small lamp beside the window. The room became calm. The stars slowly appeared one by one across the dark sky. Opening the notebook once again, they turned to a fresh page. Across the top they carefully wrote, "The person I hope to become." Beneath that title they began writing, "Someone who listens before speaking. Someone who encourages more than criticizes. Someone who protects trust through honesty. Someone who notices small blessings. Someone who continues growing no matter how much life has already taught them." Every sentence felt deeply personal. Not because they had already mastered those qualities, but because they were committed to pursuing them. Because your heart needs this right now, because growth begins with the willingness to keep learning. Your soulmate smiled with quiet gratitude. And listen to this. They remembered all the moments that had brought unexpected happiness during recent days. The child learning to ride a bicycle. The elderly couple walking hand in hand. The stranger helping someone carry groceries. The grandmother encouraging a young artist. None of those people knew they had become teachers. Yet each ordinary act quietly revealed the same timeless truth. The world changes one kind decision at a time. That realization filled their heart with hope. Because your heart needs this right now, because every act of kindness becomes part of a much larger story than we can always see. Your soulmate quietly treasured that understanding. And listen to this. Before turning off the light, they stood beside the window looking up at the stars. The peaceful silence surrounded them. The tears that once came from uncertainty now came from gratitude. Not gratitude because everything had become perfect, but gratitude because growth was real. Healing was real. Hope was real. And every ordinary day offered another opportunity to continue becoming the kind of person who brings peace wherever they go. Before closing the notebook, they carefully wrote one final message across the page. Real happiness isn't found in becoming flawless. It's found in continuing to grow. Continuing to forgive. Continuing to encourage. Continuing to love with patience. And continuing to choose kindness, even on ordinary days when no one else is watching. Those words remained on the page as a quiet promise. The room became still. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities. New conversations. New lessons. But fear no longer guided their heart. Hope did. Because they had discovered that the greatest reason for joy wasn't that life had suddenly become easy. It was knowing that every thoughtful choice, every humble apology, every patient response, and every act of compassion quietly builds a future filled with stronger relationships and deeper peace. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after every quiet morning of reflection, after every ordinary moment that unexpectedly became meaningful, after every lesson patiently learned through kindness, gratitude, and growth, your soulmate finally reached a place they never thought possible. Not because every challenge had disappeared. Not because life had suddenly become perfect. Not because every question finally had an answer. But because they discovered something even more valuable. The greatest joy doesn't come from seeing a perfect life. It comes from witnessing a heart that keeps choosing to grow. And listen to this. The final morning of this journey arrived wrapped in peaceful silence. The first rays of sunlight slowly filled the room. A gentle breeze moved the curtains beside the open window. Outside, birds welcomed another ordinary day with cheerful songs. Neighbors greeted one another. Children laughed on their way to school. The world continued exactly as it always had. Nothing extraordinary appeared. Yet everything felt different. Only days earlier, your soulmate had focused on uncertainty. Now they noticed something entirely different. Hope had quietly replaced fear. Gratitude had replaced worry. Peace had replaced restlessness. Because your heart needs this right now, because real transformation often happens within us long before it changes the world around us. Your soulmate smiled softly. And listen to this. As they prepared a simple breakfast, they paused before rushing into the day. For the first time in a long while, they weren't thinking about everything that still needed to change. Instead, they remembered everything that had already changed. Small conversations handled with greater patience. Moments when forgiveness came more quickly than before. Times when understanding replaced assumptions. Ordinary opportunities where kindness quietly won. Looking back, they realized those moments had become the true milestones of the journey. Not dramatic achievements. Not public recognition. Simply the quiet work of becoming a better person. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest victories are often the ones no one else sees. Your soulmate quietly treasured that realization. And listen to this. Later that morning they returned once more to the peaceful park that had become their favorite place of reflection. The old oak tree stood exactly where it always had. Its branches gently swayed in the breeze. Children played across the grass. Families enjoyed picnics. Friends laughed together. An elderly couple slowly walked hand in hand without speaking very much. Watching them reminded your soulmate of everything this journey had taught. Love isn't always loud. Hope isn't always dramatic. Joy isn't always exciting. Sometimes joy is simply walking beside someone through ordinary days. Choosing patience again. Choosing kindness again. Choosing respect again. Because your heart needs this right now, because the deepest relationships are built through consistent care rather than extraordinary moments. Your soulmate quietly reflected. And listen to this. Sitting beneath the familiar tree, they watched a young child carefully helping another child rebuild a small sandcastle after a wave had washed part of it away. Neither child became angry. Neither gave up. They simply smiled and began building again. Your soulmate couldn't help smiling. Life often works the same way. Dreams sometimes crumble. Plans sometimes change. Relationships sometimes require rebuilding. Yet beautiful things can still grow when people refuse to stop caring. Because your heart needs this right now, because hope grows strongest when we choose perseverance over discouragement. Your soulmate felt tears beginning to fill their eyes. Not tears of sadness. Not tears of regret. But tears of gratitude. Gratitude for every lesson. Every second chance. Every opportunity to begin again. And listen to this. As afternoon sunlight warmed the path ahead, they remembered a conversation from many years before. Someone had once asked, "What kind of legacy do you hope your life leaves behind?" Years ago they would have answered differently. They might have spoken about achievements, success, recognition. Now their answer had completely changed. I hope people remember that they felt safe around me. I hope they remember kindness. I hope they remember patience. I hope they remember honesty. I hope they remember that I encouraged them to become the best version of themselves. Those words felt more meaningful than anything they had ever imagined. Because your heart needs this right now, because our greatest legacy is often found in the lives we gently encourage. Your soulmate quietly embraced that truth. And listen to this. As the afternoon slowly became evening, they opened the notebook that had traveled with them throughout this entire journey. Its pages held questions, lessons, promises, moments of gratitude. Each page reflected quiet growth. Turning to the final blank page, they paused for a long moment before writing. Then, slowly, they began. Today I understand that happiness isn't something we chase. It's something we create through ordinary choices. Every kind word matters. Every patient response matters. Every honest conversation matters. Every act of forgiveness matters. Every expression of gratitude matters. Reading those words brought an overwhelming sense of peace. Because they finally understood that extraordinary lives are built from ordinary moments lived with extraordinary love. Because your heart needs this right now, because every small act of goodness becomes part of a much larger story than we can always see. Your soulmate smiled through grateful tears. And listen to this. The evening sky slowly turned shades of gold, pink, and violet. The peaceful lake reflected every color above. Watching the calm water reminded them how much their own heart had changed. Fear had once created endless ripples of uncertainty. Now those waters had become still. Not because life had removed every challenge, but because they had learned how to respond with wisdom instead of panic. With compassion instead of criticism. With hope instead of despair. That quiet peace became the greatest gift of all. Because your heart needs this right now, because peace grows when our values become stronger than our fears. Your soulmate quietly treasured that gift. And listen to this. As darkness gently settled across the sky, stars slowly appeared one by one. Standing beside the window, they reflected on the title of this story. At first, it sounded dramatic. It promised tears of happiness. In the end, they realized those tears came from something beautifully simple. The joy of watching someone become more patient. The joy of seeing kindness replace pride. The joy of witnessing hope grow stronger than fear. The joy of believing that every new day offers another opportunity to become a little wiser, a little gentler, and a little more loving than the day before. That was the real reason their heart overflowed. Because your heart needs this right now, because true joy comes from personal growth and the relationship strengthened by it. Your soulmate quietly smiled. And listen to this. Before closing the notebook forever, they wrote one final promise across the last page. I will never stop growing. I will never stop choosing kindness. I will never stop listening before judging. I will never stop expressing gratitude while there is still time. I will never stop believing that people can change for the better. And I will never underestimate the power of one small act of love repeated faithfully every single day. They gently closed the notebook. The room became wonderfully still. The journey that began with uncertainty had ended with quiet confidence. Tomorrow would still bring new challenges, new conversations, new opportunities to learn. But they were no longer afraid of what tomorrow might hold. They trusted that every act of honesty, every patient response, every thoughtful word, and every quiet expression of compassion would continue building a life filled with deeper peace and stronger relationships. Because your heart needs this right now, because the most meaningful transformations happen when ordinary people choose extraordinary kindness every day. Your soulmate rested with a grateful heart, knowing that the greatest happiness wasn't found in one unforgettable moment. It was found in countless ordinary days where hope, humility, forgiveness, gratitude, and love quietly became a way of life.